All right, back live with you tonight on In Focus. The Democratic Alliance says the Independent Police Investigative Directorate Amendment Bill currently before Parliament is unconstitutional. The official opposition argues that in its current form, the draft legislation will not help curb police brutality and misconduct. At the same time, questions have been raised about Ipids' independence, and there are also suggestions for the Directorate to be turned into a Chapter 9 institution. But to help us address some of these issues and get some answers, we are now joined by Lesiba Thobakgale, speaks for the South African Police Union. Lesiba, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. There are a number of things there that are coming on. One is that the bill in its current form is unconstitutional, but two, it will not assist with dealing with police misconduct within the South African Police Service. What is your view on that point being raised by the Democratic Alliance?
Thank you so much, Butabo, for having us tonight. We just want to start off by saying that we have made submissions in Parliament, and even today, orally, we presented our submissions as the South African Policing Union there. And the approach clearly that speaks to the fact that they want Ipid, somebody suggests that Ipid should be at least a Chapter 9 institution. We really don't believe there's a need for us to reinvent the wheel, because they've got their independence already. There's issues that relate to how Ipid is functioning, which we do not view clearly as a legislative challenge, but it is issues that needs to be dealt with administratively. So if there's issues that speaks to like the issues of vetting, which the way it has been left, our concern comes clearly to say that at least if one comes to be employed within the space thereof, the issue of vetting should be taken very seriously, and it should have issues of time frames. Those are some of the submissions that we have made, because we know that the backlog that has to deal with vetting also, it affects on how the functionality also comes up when it comes to the police. At least if then there is now a clause that gives the issues of the time frames, then we are able to clearly deal with it. And when it comes to the issues of discipline that you just highlighted upon, Tabo, we want to be clear that it should not even wait for any the report that comes from Ipid to deal with the issue of discipline, because in terms of the disciplinary regulations, and any act must not, it should not conflict with the existing act. Discipline is a line management function, and management has the prerogative to discipline their workers. So if then commanders are to wait for something like a report that comes from Ipid, then that issue of line management, and even Ipid themselves, having to be putting their nose more, especially when it comes to the issues of discipline, then it will really be defeating the purpose of discipline itself. We really don't believe that some of the suggestions that they've brought, other members, other parties have brought, they are really going to assist. But we really need to deal with administrative challenges that are there, like the lack of capacity. When we look at the issues of the conditions of service, when it comes to their salaries determinations and so on, it is being left to the hands of the minister to determine on how they are supposed to be paid, the conditions of service thereof, which, as Sapu, we are saying, they should also enjoy collective bargaining like the rest of public servants who are enjoying the issues of collective bargaining, so that collectively we can be able to deal with them. So we are saying that even Ipid should be clearly subjected to collective bargaining, so that conditions of service we could be able to determine there, but not only to be left to the hands of the minister to deal with them.
Yeah. Remember the last time when we were speaking about this conversation, we were talking on the Ipid report, which reflected, for example, a rise in assault cases, and there were some recommendations there. There was a big conversation around why the recommendations of Ipid were not being implemented. And one of the issues that came up was that, well, we need to find some teeth for this organization so that it bites a little bit more. Now, the DA is saying that the bill in its current form doesn't seem to give Ipid the necessary teeth. You and I would have spoken about for example, issues of leadership, which you said is part of the reason why the recommendations of Ipid or the actions that need to be taken are not being taken. What needs to change then in that bill as far as that is concerned?
What needs to change, Butabo, it is the issue of administrative challenges that we are referring to say then Ipid is being viewed as if like they are not biting, as if like they don't have teeth to bite, whereas they've got a responsibility to make sure that they are policing the police so that the police cannot police themselves. Their main mandate is for them to make sure that they are policing the police. But issues that makes their reports to delay as well, I think that's where we need to start, to say where there's allegations that happened and you find that investigations are taking long and so on. And at the end of the day, when those recommendations come, they happen to found to, more especially when it comes to recommendations that lead, not when it comes to the criminal cases, but when it comes to actions that should be taken in terms of the disciplinary steps internally. So the lack of capacity needs to be dealt with there, and even them being underfunded. So those are some of the challenges that needs to be dealt with. Because if you do not have enough investigators who should go and investigate and make sure that there are time frames that are given for them to say within such a time frames, there should be results that really are showing, so that those cases, they seem not to delay. Because in most cases, it comes out where cases are taking long for them to be finalized. And at the end of the day, it looks like Ipid is not able to do what they have been given as a responsibility in terms of the Act. So we need to deal with administrative challenges that are there and make sure that they've got enough funding, make sure that they are able to employ even more investigators. They've got measures in place for them to make sure that their turnaround time is really reasonable, so that there are no delays that are being found there, because that is what creates a perception as if like they are not biting, because it does not help. Imagine if the investigation gets to be finished after 3 years, then recommendations come thereafter. So it really looks like maybe they are not functioning. But to us, it is not a legislative challenge, but it needs to be dealt. It needs to be really resolved administratively. So
the suggestion is that there needs to be a healthy distance between, for example, someone like the police minister and the director at Ipid. You remember the last court case in 2019 was around the minister then removing the executive director at Ipid, and the court's ruling that was unconstitutional. And there's a feeling that there needs to be that very clear gap there that is created, so that you don't have the Ipid, which is supposed to be investigating police, being interfered with by political players.
From our side, Butabo, we don't believe that because of that case. I think we're clearly referring to the McBride case, that stemming from that case, because that action has taken place in that manner where the court then said, no, it was a wrongful action. That on its own, it does not mean that then Ipid should then be reinvented. They will need to be reinvented because of that specific court case or that incident that occurred, which led now to a court case having found that the minister did not act appropriately. But we believe that Ipid on its own, it already has its own independence. And for them to be on their own there, remember they are governed as well. When you look at the issue of the Police Act, it clearly shows to say who investigates and who prosecutes and so on. And Ipid looking into the actions of the police themselves. So we believe that their independence, as it appears in their name as Ipid, clearly it is there. But all issues that are there and in any form of challenge that can be showing some issues when it comes to separation of powers, those are issues that needs to be dealt with, not to be taken on a blanket approach because of one case to say that then that is a reason why then they should be it should clearly be considered to be a Chapter 9 institution. That is not what we believe that it will assist, because somewhere you'll find that different legislation when it comes to the Police Act and also to Ipid Act itself, then they will start to conflict with one another. And that is not a situation that we would like to see, because at the end of the day, the Minister of Police is still the one that is responsible to appoint the one who's heading the Ipid and so on. That does not clearly mean that he's given powers to really have influence or to do as he pleases or she pleases when it comes to Ipid, because the Act itself, it shows the separation of power in its current form when it comes to the separation of powers.
Yeah. So, I mean, currently there are also submissions around the National Prosecuting Authority Amendment Bill. And the current conversation around there is to create, for example, an investigative body, an independent investigative body that is going to investigate corruption, that is funded, I suppose, separately from the NPA. You don't think that Ipid would benefit from that degree of independence? Maybe not a Chapter 9 institution, but independent in that sense, where its budget is not reliant on the SAPS.
Butabo, remember the NPA, they are able on their own to, to have some of the investigators that really are looking into certain types of matters. There is just that wing that is available from that side. But then, if everything is conflicted, I mean, it is then being taken and combined with the responsibilities that Ipid has. Now it comes up to say, what type of matters now would Ipid be focusing on? Because they are here to deal with issues that relates to the police, being police brutality or anything that is related to the police. So we really believe that Ipid on their own, they need to be capacitated when it comes to having enough manpower and so on, but not to conflict other responsibilities or other functions that may, where a conversation has arisen when it comes to what the NPA is envisaging to achieve when it comes to investigations and so on. But Ipid clearly should be left with its own independence, but not for it to be taken anywhere and for it to be mixed in any form with any other form of structure when it comes to investigations. Because at the end of the day, they should not lose focus clearly to the mandate that they have been given in terms of the Act. So that is quite important to us, for them to have that independence. Even though they are in the police, relying on the budget of the police, it comes up now to say that the Minister of Police and even government at large, when it comes to the budget of Ipid, there is just issues that has to be dealt with to increase their budget for them to be able to function. But we don't think that anything that takes Ipid out of what they are supposed to be doing directly as they've been given those powers, it will really assist, because they are given such a very serious task that they have to carry out independently, so without any influence from the police or any influence coming from anyone else.
All right, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Lesiba there, speaking on behalf of the South African Policing Union, Lesiba Thobakgale.